Hello and welcome. I'm Hushcho, and this is my review of The Howling 2. That's right, I decided to come back and do reviews again, and it's The Howling 2. I figured most of you had probably either seen The Howling or heard of The Howling, so you'd probably be on the same page with me, regarding The Howling. The Howling 2 is something that a lot of people actually haven't seen because it has something of an absolutely terrible reputation, and honestly, a lot of it is deserved. It's not to say it's a terrible movie altogether. It has a lot of really good ideas, and some of the direction is actually really good. You see these beautiful shots and beautiful places. You see a lot of fun direction and some genuinely excellent ideas. It's like a giant mess. It really is a giant mess, and even actors such as Christopher Lee, who brings just this amazing sort of dignity that it doesn't deserve, and Sybil Danning, who, handles it with a sort of a very workmanlike professionalism, as she does, which is why I love her so much. She's always very professional about whatever she does, and it always gets her supreme, utter, total attention, which I think is fantastic. It's one of the reasons why I've always admired her as an actress, and she's a very gracious lady. But and of course, Freddie Main is in this as well, but blink and you've missed him, because every time he's on the screen, he's basically just absorbed in the scenery as scenery. You also have Reb Brown, who is either looking vaguely frustrated or horribly, horribly overreacting, and of course, screaming out a lot at the squeaky voice, which is something he does very well. The film opens with an absolutely hilarious narration by an extremely bored and confused looking Christopher Lee. For some reason they choose to put a skeleton in the background with its mouth hanging open as if it's saying, OMG, what the hell is going on? This is an accurate portent of things to come. They are superimposed on a star field. Again, for no real reason. The film actually has an opening like the Amicus anthologies of the 70s, and if you know what I'm talking about, and probably a lot of you actually do, it's just these weird images of like tombs and building facades and creepy things, buildings. This doesn't really indicate in any way what the film is about or any real thing in it. That's just the direction they decided to go in. This film also has a lot of really awkward transitions, like this screen wipe. They do screen wipes from side to side, they do spirals, they do everything they can do with the wipe. And if you're a film student or any sort of director or a film expert, a scholar, you will know that wipes are really kind of frowned upon because they don't tend to look very good. I have to be honest here, it's very in keeping with the film and the feel of the film because this film is so campy and weird. It kind of works, but I would not advise it in general for films. We get that this takes place, or at least opens up, in Los Angeles, City of the Angels, which is kind of an awkward subtitle there, but I suppose that they can get away with it. We arrive at the funeral of one Karen White, which I imagined from the original film that they had named her Karen White so as not to be confused with popular actress Karen Black. The main character from The Howling 1 is presumed to be dead, and in this we of course see that it is her funeral. The priest gives possibly the most awkward eulogy ever, and it's like a train wreck. You hear what he's saying, you see him, and you think, he's really going there? He's really going there. He totally went there. It is possibly the worst eulogy I have ever heard, and easily the most inappropriate. You just kind of have to hear it. You will just be like, I can't believe this. Your jaw will probably drop like the skeleton in the intro, and you will think, yep, he really just said that. In a scripted film, I might add. Doesn't really add anything to the plot. It just makes everyone feel extremely uncomfortable that this person is presiding over a funeral. Now we see Jenny. She is one of the most wooden actresses that I have ever seen in my life. Jenny delivers every line with the conviction of a 3-year-old. And maybe this is the innocence of the actress or the character or whatnot. I don't know. I've not seen her in anything else. I don't know if this was just a question of bad direction, but God, she's terrible. Reb Brown is also similarly extremely flat. And I know he can emote. He does it really well, actually. That's one of the things that he actually does really well is emote. Sometimes in an over-the-top way. In fact, most of the time in an awkward, over-the-top way, if we're being honest here. But, yes, Jenny and Ben. Jenny worked with Karen in her professional life, which is funny because I don't remember seeing her anywhere in the original Howling. All I remember is a friend of Karen's coming to where she was and then dying unceremoniously. Ben is her brother, who was oddly never mentioned up until now, and seems to be very broken up about his sister's death, despite the fact that they were obviously not that close. Karen, played by a woman that looks about as much like Dee Wallace as I do, lies haphazardly in her coffin, obviously breathing. This wouldn't be quite so glaring if they didn't cut to right next to her and she had absolutely no breath control, but you can see that she is noticeably breathing, because not only does she have very little breath control, the camera lingers way too long. Then we see the priest again. He looks like Anthony Stewart Head. You can deny it, but you know it's true. You're thinking Giles right when you saw his face. Reb Brown has this amazing range in this film, going from vaguely annoyed to extremely confused. This is one of the scenes where he looks vaguely annoyed, and not really sad, but exasperated with the priest. Fair enough, because the eulogy was terrible. When they finally take the coffin to the crypt, Christopher Lee's character, named Stephen, meets with Ben. Stephen gives his card, and of course Ben is annoyed that he is talking about his deceased sister. Stephen seems to think that there is something strange going on, and he knows more than he's saying. Jenny wants to know about the card, and reads it. Occult investigator. So, of course, she goes running after him. There are two weird people in the graveyard, both of which seem to be attempting to approximate roles from the original The Howling without actually being the same characters. I know one is named Mariana, the other one I'm just going to call John Carradine stand-in, because basically he occupies the same role. He's the old crusty werewolf who does weird things. Jenny finally catches up to Stefan and asks him about what he knows about Karen's death. Well, he just out and says that she's a werewolf, as one would do in that case. Every time Christopher Lee has to interact with Ben or Jenny, he has this sort of expression and way that really looks more like he's tolerating children, which is kind of accurate considering the both of them. And again, I don't know if this was really part of the script or the way they decided to play it or the way that the direction lent to it, but it always seems like Ben and Jenny are just two large children, for whatever reason. We cut directly, and transitions are not one of the strong suits of this film. We cut directly to an underground club somewhere. This is one of those sort of weird future punk thing clubs. We see a very odd sequence of Stefan being outfitted with sunglasses for some reason. There's no real reason ever presented why he's here. And there's no reason for him to be here, to be honest. There's music, technically, and it is about as awkward as the rest of the film. The band is not without talent, but the way it's presented is not really a good showcase of that talent. We see, oddly and awkwardly, something I missed the first time watching the film, in fact, a very lackluster gay kiss between these two dudes, and one of them pushes the other away. I don't know what purpose that served. Was it supposed to show that these guys were just really horny and desperate, or what? Because Mariana walks through the crowd, and she has these fabulous earrings that I really would like. I think those are really cool, but you can probably get them at a Halloween store. So, I mean, let's be honest, you know you can probably do that. But yeah, she basically comes onto them, and even though they're rather rude, apparently she was just waiting to fuck someone. So they decide to go with her, and they take their girlfriend, who was just there. They leave at night, but they arrive when it's clearly daytime. And it's not like they left at dawn? No, they left in the middle of the night, and they arrive sometime around noon. They have a really shitty day for night effect on this warehouse where they come. It looks like someone just put a gradient on the film and just called it a day. But they're there in this warehouse, and she decides to howl, which results in a bottle hurtling out of nowhere and smashing against this one guy's face. This guy, and indeed a lot of the less important characters, he doesn't seem to really react that much. In fact, nobody really seems to react that much. They get pissed off, but you would think you would react a little bit more when something was hurtled through a space of that size and hit your head with enough force to shatter in that way. But no, he was very underwhelmed by it. It just makes them all angry. So they decide they're going to find her because she howled and she trotted off, she's taking off her clothes or something. I don't know. Who knows why anyone does anything in this movie. So her looks hit a wall. And this is all very sudden, like it's not really very well built up to. But apparently she just decided to turn into a werewolf. When Glasses Dude finds her, he's, again, underwhelmed. He's not really that surprised, but he gets kind of more surprised before he dies. And of course, everyone that comes to this warehouse ends up being killed. You weren't surprised, you knew it was coming. Ben and Jenny then meet at the crypt, and they speak awkwardly. Jenny apparently knows some things, and Ben, as usual, is toting a gun and making some sort of ridiculous barnyard analogy. I don't know why, but that's what happened. John Carradine dude is watching them. God knows how they couldn't notice this dude, because it's not like he dresses for stealth. And he does this sort of weird pawing thing, like he moves his feet. He did it earlier at the graveyard. He does this pawing thing where he moves his feet and it looks like he's pawing at the ground. And it's neat and everything, but like, what is it for? Nobody ever explains what the fuck it's for. So you see him doing this and you're just like, well, that's neat and everything, but whatever. You know, it has no actual bearing on the plot whatsoever. It never comes to any conclusion. Never becomes relevant to the plot. It's just there. I guess it's just a touch to the character. But then we don't know anything about the character either, except that he's obviously trying to take the John Carradine role from the original. Ben and Jenny decide to go and see Stefan, who explains about Karen and has the tape, which disappeared, and apparently no one saw, despite that not being consistent with the ending of the original The Howling. In the original The Howling, she goes live on TV and transforms into a werewolf. This is supposed to be exactly what it sounds like, telling other people that werewolves exist and proving it by doing a live broadcast. It was not a tape, and the tape was not, never shown to anybody. Everybody saw it. It's not something that you can hide and just cover up like that. But anyway, that's what happens. We also have a woman in this tape who looks even less like Dee Wallace than the woman in the coffin. She gets shot, and presumably this tape was stolen by Stefan? We don't know. It never really explains what happened there. Then Stefan pulls out a giant photo presentation of Mariana. I don't know where he got these photos from. I don't know why he decided to make a large handheld infographic. It looks like he's presenting his science fair experiment to Ben and Jenny. It's as awkward as it sounds. He looks as uncomfortable as it must surely be to heft this giant piece of board, really, with photographs tacked on to it. I don't know why anybody would do that. It's like he was just waiting for them because he wanted to show them what he could make with a glue stick and time. He explains that Mariana, like some particularly powerful werewolves, are immune to silver bullets, and that, in fact, Ben's sister, Karen, is not dead because she was not shot with silver bullets, which is also completely inconsistent with The Howling, because by the end of it, the two survivors knew that only silver bullets would kill a werewolf, and they would kill them pretty quickly and pretty efficiently. Very effective, these silver bullets. But Stefan says no, silver bullets have to be used against her when she rises again as a werewolf after 3 days, and that some werewolves can only be killed by titanium. like Mariana. So he has this spike that he's intending to use on Mariana. And then he decides to talk about Sturba, who is the queen of the werewolves. The next full moon is the 10th millennium of Sturba's birth, and all werewolves will reveal themselves at midnight on that day. The process of evolution is reversed, he says, which seems to indicate that she's somehow going to trigger everyone to turn into a werewolf. I don't really understand. Like, it's not very clear what the stakes are here. Like, he seems to indicate that we have some sort of apocalyptic scenario, but in reality, it would seem like her triggering werewolf transformations wouldn't really be that much of a surprise to anybody. Because if you're a werewolf, you probably know you're a werewolf. If you're in the Howling universe, you definitely know you're a werewolf. And a lot of them have control over how they shift. It's not like it's something that they just do. It's something that they have a lot of control over that is shown in the original. Like, sometimes they don't, but a lot of the time it seems like they shift by force of will more than anything else. Maybe I'm not getting what they intended, but I don't know. I'm probably overthinking it as it is because it's not really the kind of film you want to think too much about. Ben's had enough, so he fucks off. Jenny stays there awkwardly, and Stefan tells her to take the silver bullets. So she takes them, and she says, thank you. No, really, she does. Watch it. She basically thanks him like a 5-year-old. That night they decide to go to the crypt. Apparently they decided that they're going to take him seriously at his word, but not seriously enough to actually help him or anything. See, they go here, and Red Brown's character Ben is armed. You know, he's got this gun, and Jenny is there, and she's got her hands in her pockets, you know, being useless. But it makes you sort of wonder why the urgency to stop someone from either sticking a dead body with a titanium spike or stopping a werewolf. Like, the thing is, if he sticks a spike in a dead body, it's still going to be a dead body. If he sticks a spike in a werewolf, and his story is true, then he's just saved you a lot of time and trouble. Like, I fail to see the urgency to get to him and stop him from doing this, because either way, it doesn't really, like, they have no reason to be this concerned about it. She's already dead, so him sticking a titanium spike in her is not really going to make any difference either way to them if they don't believe his werewolf story. But if they do believe it, then, you know, maybe they should let him do it. Either way, there's really no reason for them to oppose him so much and to be so pressed about this whole thing. So they go in there, and apparently there are like 50 billion werewolves deciding to come here because earlier Stefan had instructed them that werewolves don't like theirs to be left on consecrated ground because this is a thing now. So yeah, Karen wasn't dead. She really is a werewolf. But so all these werewolves decide that they're going to attack and all this stuff. And so Ben rescues Jenny, who is, as previously noted, completely useless, by shooting one of them in the knees. It's as obvious as it gets, but he shoots the John Carradine dude in the knees. At some point during this fight, Red Brown screams, and they clearly forget to dub in the actual scream. He just screams, and it's completely silent, but it looks really funny, so enjoy that face. The John Carradine werewolf gets slightly away, and they gently drape a net over him, which Stefan instantly flings back, making the entire gesture completely useless. They interrogate him as to the whereabouts of Sturba, and they flash to this picture of Sturba, we are to assume, who is a rather unassuming old woman in an extremely dramatic sort of cape that looks like something that M. Bison would wear from Street Fighter. John Carradine dude mumbles something or other, and basically Stefan stabs the shit out of him with a titanium knife. Or maybe it's silver, I don't know. He promises to give him eternal rest, and apparently this is what this guy wants, which doesn't seem to make any sense. It's a mess. Like I said, it's a mess. It's like someone mixed up werewolves and vampires, and they were just very afraid to actually go back and say, oh shit, that's not the same thing. They're not the same thing. Anyway, they leave it there. They leave the knife there. They leave the body there. Apparently they've shot a lot of people and killed them, because they had the silver bullets. So there's all these dead people around this crypt, and they've just left them there. Mariana watches from afar as they stab him, and I can't read the emotion on her face. Like, I seriously don't know what they told her to express here. So Stefan basically intends to just leave, to just like walk away, despite having stabbed someone with a knife that he left there, despite Ben having shot multiple people who are presumably lying dead in their non-werewolf form in their crypt, with his sister with a titanium spike in her. He's just going to leave. Ben and Jenny, perhaps the first rational thing that they've done in the entire film, decide, no, we're going with you. Because Stefan has decided to return to the old country, finish off Sturber. Ben seems to be mildly irritated with Jenny all the time. I don't know why. I really don't know why. They don't really seem to be very familiar with each other. Jenny is supposedly after writing a story on what they find. I don't know who she thinks the audience for this is going to be, especially since nobody believed the tape when they saw it. Stefan is rather irritated that they seem to be, well, he seems to be stuck with them. I hope you like this skeleton ringing a bell. Get used to it, because this isn't the last you'll see of it. Mariana arrives at Vulcava, and they do a wolf thing when they meet. They smell each other. And that's kind of neat. I mean, it's not like the pawing thing. It actually makes a lot more sense, because they actually do have that just be a thing, which I think is really neat. I think it's a nice little touch. Pawing thing, not so much, because it seemed like it needed some more explanation. These two have two halves of a medallion, and when they put it together, I kid you not, it makes a ding, and it literally makes a ding. Like, that's actually how it sounds. It goes ding. Yeah. So they load into what looks like a troop transport, and they move out. Meanwhile, Ben and Jenny are driving across the countryside to try and get to some village where apparently Stefan thinks is near Sturber's castle. And this is where you can really see that the direction is not bad on the photography, and that there are some really beautiful shots here. And it really shows that there is a capability to do good things. It just didn't come together. And then, of course, it cuts to an awkward shot of two men's butts. Not because they're men, just because it's an awkward shot for any character. We don't know why they are focusing on these two men's butts, but they are. Apparently they didn't bring any food for the werewolves. I keep wanting to call them vampires, and that's probably because they seem to be mixing a lot of the lore. And to be fair, yeah, a lot of the lore is mixed with a lot of the supernatural creatures, because a lot of it was, evil things, so consecrated ground, holy things, the church, etc. That sort of thing. But it does really seem to be that they just not only didn't really pay attention to the first film, but were clearly trying to go off into territory that was way too ambitious for this script, and for the ability of the entire crew. Anyway, they pick up these two hitchhikers who are apparently supposed to be German. They load them in, and one of the drivers is like, "Schnitzel." But despite them screaming in the back, when it cuts back to the back, there is clearly nothing at all going on, except someone is touching one of the guy's butts. So I don't know if this is extremely traumatic to him, but it is the mildest thing in the movie. Another swipe, and we are at some sort of formal werewolf affair. We're just to assume that Mariana arrived, and that everyone arrived, and that they got everybody there. There could have been a much better transition, and it probably should have cut to what Ben and Jenny were doing and then cut back to this, but it didn't. It looks like an extremely awkward and very boring BDSM convention. Nobody is sure where to look, and I can see why. Everybody has a stupid outfit on. This guy is especially unfortunate because, just look at him. He's clearly a handsome dude, but that? No. The old woman playing Sturber is... It looks like she's very confused. Like, she's really not sure what's going on. And I can't say I blame her, because I don't think at any given moment anyone in the film was entirely sure what was going on either. Finally, they do some sort of ritual, and Sturba is revitalized into Sybil Danning, whom we've all been waiting for the past 30 minutes. She has the most ridiculous stick-on nails that you have ever seen in your life. And naturally, she's wearing a perfectly fitting, sexy dress under her robes, which raises a lot of questions, actually, because clearly the old woman was not in the same shape as Sybil. Yet that dress is perfectly positioned, like, what, did she put on spirit gum beforehand? Was she just waiting for this to happen? Who knows? I'm kind of curious, to be honest. Sturba meets Mariana and basically treats her like a walking womb, and dude with the really unfortunate hat apparently approves. The idiot squad stopped to see a woman who was allegedly hit by a car, which some peasants are telling her about, despite there being a car halfway off the cliff next to her. The peasants all just sort of walk off, and only Stefan seems to think this is weird. Of course, the woman is a werewolf, and this was a very obvious trap. They kill her, and then they decide to just split up. Stefan tells them to meet up in the village, and they decide to do this, which really kind of raises a lot of questions for me. Anyway, they get back in the car, apparently with no peripheral vision or brains in their heads, and oops, there's a werewolf in the back seat. Yeah. Ben, as usual, screams in a squeaky voice, "Oh shit!" And he kind of does it mildly, like this is just a casual inconvenience. He nearly runs the car off the road, but they kill the werewolf with one bullet and just kind of ho ho ho. Then we cut to hilarious werewolf sex. This scene drags on for way too long. And simultaneously, it doesn't go on for long enough because it is absolutely ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. It looks as ludicrous as this screenshot indicates. It is amazing in its ridiculousness, and I have to admire everyone involved for trying desperately hard to make this in any way seem erotic or arousing, because it is hilarious. It looks so unpleasant. It just looks awful. Now, clearly, once we go back to the village, one of the dudes performing is clearly the dude in the horrible hat from the scene just previous. So either he has an extremely active twin, or we're not supposed to think these two characters are the same. But see, later in the film, we know the two characters are the same, because they admit that the characters are the same. So I don't know what they're trying here, but they have these two dancers, and it's like a mother and daughter dancing team, and the mother is doing a sexier dance than the daughter. I don't know what to think here. I don't dislike it, I just think it's very odd. But apparently it's some sort of local festival, which they do for every new full moon, which makes me think that they get these festivities up every single month. They do this every single month? Is there a time when there's not a festival, or they're not preparing for one? I swear it's like Mystic Falls. Jenny takes out a giant rope of garlic from her luggage as a precaution. Apparently this gets the wolf senses up. I don't know why. Ben then sits on the table and nearly breaks it, leaving Jenny on the fainting sofa. It's small. Jenny needs Ben to hold her, despite them never really having indicated being in any sort of relationship, nor actually having any chemistry, beyond both of them basically just acting like children all the time. So they kind of make out, and Big Klutz kicks their luggage off of the fainting couch. Apparently the wolves can smell them fucking, which, if they're doing, they're very skilled at this, because he's still got his trousers on, and the way she's positioned, that's not happening. It doesn't look very fun. Later on, after the extremely underwhelming sex, they are beckoned by a small person. "Should we follow him?" she asks, which sort of makes me think that these people shouldn't be allowed out on their own for their own safety. They do follow him, and they, as always, look either bored or like guilty children who are being lectured by their principal. They find Stefan in the local church. He gives them a glamour shot of Mariana. We don't know where he got this. Presumably it was one of the actress's headshots. They determine that they are going to communicate with their agents that Stefan has found and assembled in this church through the puppet show at the festival. Because you can just communicate with them casually in the middle of a puppet show. Stefan tells him to have patience. Ben says, "I don't have any patience." Christopher Lee is so done with your shit, Reb Brown. He's so done. He gives them protective medallions that are supposed to shield them from something, but who knows what it actually is going to be. Then we have more of Mama shaking her thing, and looking pretty happy doing it. Later, Ben cleans his gun in bed, with an extremely masturbatory gesture. They go into basically plot exposition in bed, where she informs him that the town's name means the place where the wolves live, and they determine that they're right spot in the middle of the werewolf danger. At the festivities, we see that the dude in the red shirt from the performers before is indeed the same wolf dude. The exact same outfit, the exact same person, because he's seen with Mariana. Then there is this dude that looks like he should be named Scarface, in the background grimacing. We don't know why. Nothing leads up to this. He just stands out like someone from a different movie completely. He joins up with the two people that actually look like they belong there, and they stare at Stefan, who is standing there smoking with an extremely large and extremely unwieldy pipe, daring them to fuck with him by just standing there silently. Jenny finds out that Ben went to the gypsy camp, which seems to make even less sense than communicating through a puppet show. Sturber then has a really terrible audio overlay for her magic spell? Whatever. Anyway, this outfit is awful. It is absolutely hideous. The thing that bothers me the most about it, it's a neat idea. It would be a neat concept of fashion, but it's made in such a way that it looks absolutely uncomfortable and not that impressive. It would be better if the lower part, from the legs down, were made up more like boots. However, when you do see a rare long shot of Sturber, she's clearly just wearing black heels with it. It's not boots, she's wearing shoes with this armor, if it's supposed to be armor, which it really wouldn't be very effective as because she has enormous dipping cleavage. Ben and the small man, Vasila, decide to go stalk Sturber's castle, which is apparently where they were, instead of being at this gypsy camp, which who knows what it was. They probably wrote it and forgot about it. We actually do get some development between Ben and Vasila, where Ben expresses gratitude that the other man is there, and they seem to be getting on pretty well. Vasila gives Ben these earplugs, and later we find out that these were probably made from the sacred candles of the church or some shit. Without any explanation at this point, he just gives them the earplugs and he just sticks them in and says, okay. Vasila decides that he's going to deal with the guard, and Ben just says rock and roll. So they deal with the guard and get in. It's pretty neat because Vasila actually throws the knife and shows that he's very competent in battle, in a fight, which is kind of interesting. He's not just the kind of character that you can forget about or ignore. And I thought it was a really good touch to have a character like that is commonly used, like a lot of films. And the reason why I'm saying this is kind of one of those films where you would not expect it to be respectful to any of its characters, really. So to see that kind of respect paid to a character that is obviously supposed to come off as compelling and sympathetic and capable, it's actually kind of remarkable. So I have to give it kudos for that. It was at least some effort, even though it could have been more, and more for the rest of the film too. Sturber is now wearing ridiculous sunglasses, and she casts a spell with an utterly ridiculous wobbly gargoyle dragon thing on a stick. God knows what this is, but it's really awful. It's absolutely ridiculous. She looks great casting the spell, but it's so ridiculous. We're supposed to assume that this brings out some werewolf transformations, but who knows what it actually does because, as said before, this is clunky as hell. Vasila's earplugs fall out, and he dies, as Sturber kills him. His eyes basically pop out of his head in really the least special effect ever. Jenny, meanwhile, is with an obviously evil dude, and she says, "What is that?" "Well, it's your friend dying." Ben, meanwhile, scrambles back to the village while the evil dude tries to rape Jenny. He suffocates her into unconsciousness, which is not exactly a minor thing. You would think that if she passed out after he cut off her air supply, that could be a serious problem. Like, she might be seriously injured, so if you have plans for her, you might want to check on that. And clearly Sturber does have plans for her, because she rescues her, says for the dude to be taken away and taught discipline, and then rips off the medallion with absolutely no problem. Jenny is supposed to lure in her real prey, Stefan. Sturber sends the medallion to get Stefan going. Stefan sees someone whom he thinks is a child and screams at them. Then, when they run away, after having shown him the medallion, he pursues them and then tries to talk to them nicer once he's got them cornered in a vacant building. Of course, we know it's obvious who this is. It's Vesela, who subsequently cuts Stefan and is thrown out a window by Ben, who arrives knowing nothing about the situation, but decides it's time to defenestrate someone. He is instantly impaled on something on the ground, and Stefan says that wasn't Vesela, but instead Sturber's magic, which is kind of not true, because it was Vesela, but it was animated by Sturber's magic. Jenny's tied up in some sort of skull room and smeared with blood, which really sort of reflects on her face our feelings about the film at this point. Meanwhile, Stefan tells his allies what's happened, and they decide to outline their weapons in the church. They have things like wax from the sacred candles that were previously mentioned, which might have actually been good to mention earlier, and then have this scene take place at a different time. But whatever. They hand over a gun in front of an appalled statue of Jesus, which apparently the gun belonged to Vesela, and that's what Ben knows, so that's what he wants. The other items that they have in their arsenal are kind of questionable. Like, they've got a consecrated prism? What are you going to do with that? A dagger, which is obviously exactly the same one he left in the graveyard, and a chalice? What are you going to do with a chalice against werewolves? Then they cut back to the club. Like, it's obviously the club. It's not anywhere else. They try and make it seem like it's Sturber's castle, but it's clearly a shot from the club. Like, they're not even wearing different things. It's the club. They have these people dressed up like they're extras from Pirates of the Caribbean or something. There's no real explanation for it. They just are. There's this one dude, and I just want to say, "Governor!" every time I see him, and you can't not see him. He's wearing a fucking white suit and a wig. A curly, long wig. The werewolf orgy is possibly the most boring orgy you have ever seen. It's just so dull. Like, you have no idea how dull this is. Sturber is obviously bored, as anyone would be. It's so boring. Stefan and the others, however, advance on the castle, and the cinematography is so dark that you really can't see anything happening. Comical helmet dude informs Sturber as Masquerade Granny looks on, confused. Sturber, in turn, thumps her stupid staff a couple of times, and the music hilariously just stops all at once, as it clearly would do in reality. All the werewolves presumably go to attack. This results in the most difficult to make out sequence I think I have seen since Manos. You don't really know what's going on because it is so dark, and the lighting's so poor, there's really nothing you can make out. Occasionally you'll see someone shoot a gun, occasionally you'll hear Red Brown scream. Like at one point he says, "Stop it, look out! Fuzzballs!" Like you literally hear him say fuzzballs in that squeaky high-pitched voice that he screams in all the time, and it's amazing, but it's also really stupid, as you would imagine. The lighting is absolutely terrible, and the whole thing only gets worse because it's like all these werewolves, presumably fairly competent werewolves, are no match against these. It's like a band of like 5, mainly like senior citizens and this extremely excitable, utterly untrained young dude. They walk past some sort of ditch, and you know that something's happening because it's this really pathetically, like it's obviously a trap, but they all keep walking by it, and there's some sort of werewolf gopher that attacks them. So Stefan throws in what is apparently some sort of holy hand grenade. It's really kind of amazing. And Sturber gets annoyed or bored or something, and there's this sort of hilarious overlay of like, I presume it's the werewolf and the grenade just blowing up and doing this firework thing. It's amazing in how ridiculous it is. Sturber keeps prompting these attacks, which they get more effective, but you think that she would have kind of planned this a little bit better, because it's implied that all the other werewolves were already defeated and she only has a few left to attack. Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just wipe them all out? Jenny is bored, as usual, and covered in the blood that they were smearing her with earlier. She's probably very confused, as she has been the whole time. Meanwhile, upstairs they're doing some sort of god-awful ridiculous ritual. Nobody knows what it's for, but Sturber decides to have her two lackeys go bring her Jenny. An oddly placed clip makes it look like the dude is uncontrollably transforming or possibly having sex with Mariana while they go down the stairs to get Jenny. Don't really know why this is or what's happening, but that is sort of a motif for the film. Sometimes the director just puts in sequences that are obviously not in sequence. They're just there, and they're extremely confusing. Stefan decides to split up with his allies and tells Ben to go rescue Jenny. Sturber, in the meantime, decides to do more spells, while the priest creeps up on Sturber and is attacked by, yes, the wobbly thing on her staff. Gargoyle on a stick was actually alive, somehow. It's a terrible effect, and it alien impregnates him? Like, I don't know how this works. None of this is ever really explained in any detail, and it's not worked up to either. It just sort of happens. Like, Howling 2 is a series of events that just sort of happen, and you have to kind of figure out whatever you can take from it, because it's not going to hold your hand. In fact, it's not going to do anything but confuse the shit out of you, even if you watch it as many times as I have to try and get something to comment on. It is one of the most oddly paced and oddly presented films that I've ever seen in my life, because it's just like, it just gives you all of this stuff and expects you to just take it at face value. You know, it doesn't decide to over-explain things, which in many cases is good, but it would have really helped to have some explanation at some of this stuff, because we just basically have to assume 90% of the time. Sturber stands awkwardly by like she just doesn't really know what to do or where to look, and considering the situation, I probably would feel the same way. Ben, meanwhile, arrives to rescue Ginny and kills Mariana and company unceremoniously. You would think it would take more effort for two prominent werewolves that are obviously very powerful, but all that build-up was apparently for nothing. Thanks a lot. Stefan sees an inverted crucifix with some candles around it and decides to cast a spell, so he can do this now. Ben and Jenny, meanwhile, get the hell out of Dodge. They don't go and find Stefan, they don't try and help him, they just get the fuck out. Which really says a lot about them, really says a lot about the movie. Stefan confronts Sturber, who has changed her outfit yet again, and she reveals that they were lovers. She calls upon the power of the devil, and tries to compel him to come and love her. For some reason, she takes her old woman form, and I don't know why she does this. I don't know if it is because she thought it was more attractive to him, or because we're supposed to assume that it was an illusion that she was ever young. But that's not possible, because she did that whole drinking in of the life essence thing they did with all the blood and the rituals and nobody really knowing where to look earlier. It's clearly indicated that Sturber absorbed the life force of the young woman so that she could transform into a young woman herself. It makes no sense if it's just some sort of illusion, and she transforms back instantly anyway. Also, there is this stuffed wolf by her throne, and I don't know if they were trying to go for creepy or if they were trying to go for goofy, but in one of the earlier scenes, she's petting it extensively, as if it's alive. I almost think that they really wanted to get an actual live wolf for it, but they couldn't, like they couldn't afford it or something, and so they just got a taxidermied one and said, just pet it and pretend like it's alive. The wolf stays there, like this poor, unfortunate taxidermied corpse stays there, standing there by her throne throughout this entire sequence. You miss it a lot. but it's there. So they are also revealed to be siblings, and I've seen some people explain this off as, well, she considered all werewolves her brethren, and that makes sense, but if that's true, why do a dramatic reveal at this point in the film? Like, why even bother? So apparently they were incestuous lovers, and apparently Stefan is a lot older than he looks. So he stabs her when he gets close enough, after steeling himself mentally, and she says, "In blood and flame we will be wedded for eternity." Then they catch on fire for some reason. I'm not really sure why this happened, but... So this is what she wanted? Did she want this? What's happening? Like, this is a place where explanation would have helped a lot. Because all we get is Stefan doing his weird sort of religious overtone narration thing. And that's not helping us figure out what the hell is going on the screen. Like, these two are basically wiggling around on fire, and you sort of thought the whole confrontation was over, but apparently not, because they are still fighting, I guess. I saw some synopsis that said they were still fighting while they were on fire, but it seemed like the whole thing was pretty well resolved when Stefan stabbed her and they both burst into flames. You don't know, but then the gargoyle thing kind of comes out of the priest's mouth, and I guess it's baby gargoyle or whatever. It's a giant flaming mess at this point, and there's this hilariously, awfully superimposed fire on it. There's no real reason for this, it's just there. I think it's to hide the fact that the prosthetic they used for the fake priest head was god-awful. But fuck that. No explanation is given anymore, because they go right back to the festival, and Ben goes and threatens a musician at gunpoint. The quickest way to get to the airport. What an asshole. Like, why would you even do this? Why would you not just go back to the hotel and just be like, yeah, we're leaving? Like, why would you ever do that? Because not only are you advertising that you are armed and dangerous, but you are taking the chance that if more people in this place are werewolves, they're going to know who you are, that you're packing heat, and that you've only got a limited supply of bullets. They're going to wait and wear you down and then kill you. It's amazing that they got out when they did, but apparently they got back. We cut back to the club again. I don't even know anymore. I don't know. Because, like, were we supposed to believe that they were at Sturber's castle before? Because they were clearly in the club. And this was days before, like, network meeting things, you know, like, you wouldn't really be able to... Who knows? Maybe it was some sort of television broadcast. Maybe it was the Werewolf TV channel or something. I don't know. But it cuts back to the club, and then it cuts to them in this apartment. And apparently it's Halloween because they're trick-or-treating. They're entertaining trick-or-treaters. Which you would think after that experience they wouldn't be so eager to do, but they're settling into some sort of new domestic life. I don't really know why. They get some sort of creepy wolf kid with really not impressive effects, and they decide to hit up their new neighbors because they think that the kid is from their new neighbors. Well, no, it's this creepy sort of psycho priest dude who makes a big deal out of saying that he's a bachelor and lives alone, and of course he doesn't have a kid. Of course he doesn't have a kid, he's a fucking priest. But he invites them in and hopes that they'll come in later. They say, much later, after he closes the door, and I guess that just closes the book on them. And then we have another weird wipe, and it's like it goes back to the club, they do a song, it cuts up to the moon, and without any real transition it starts to cut to what is apparently the credits, and what they also apparently thought was really funny. It's the scene from earlier where Sturber rips off her top of that perfectly fitting dress and exposes her breasts. And it cuts to reaction shots from other characters from elsewhere in the film. And it's kind of funny, but it's also kind of really confusing because there's no real transition between movie and weird-ass credits trying to be funny. So you go from the club, the moon, and then Sturber showing us her boobs again. And she does it for like 10 to 20 times. It's not like she does it once. She does it over 10 times. This would have been amusing if there had been any indication that this is what was going to happen. But there wasn't. It just sort of seamlessly flows into it. Unfortunately, this is kind of a theme for the film. A lot of things don't make any sense, and it just sort of shoves things in our face without ever explaining it or letting us know what it means. It's unfortunate because this film could have been a lot better, because it had some really neat ideas in it. Unfortunately, it wasn't handled very well at all, so instead you get a lot of incoherent babble and campy bullshit that is only really amusing if you go into it expecting more of a comedy. It really is a so bad it's good film, and that's a shame because they could have done so much better with it. There's a really good story down here. Underneath it all, there are some good roles and some good lines, some good concepts and some good characters. It's just that the film as a whole is a giant train wreck. You look at it and it's sort of like you can't look away because it's so ridiculous, but it's not something you can take seriously either. It clearly didn't take itself seriously enough to present a coherent narrative, and it certainly doesn't respect its audience or its characters enough to give them what you really would expect with something that's supposed to have this much weight to it. At no point does it ever really feel important what they're doing, and at no point does really anything seem to make any sort of an impact. You don't really know if Sturber is endangering the world. You don't know what the extent of this is. You don't know anything about the characters and their relationships really until the very end. And Ben and Jenny don't actually participate in hardly any part of the action. Most of the time it's Stefan, and he's just eating up the scenery for most of the film until the very end. Howling 2 is about a lot of spinning wheels, boobs, and really, really boring orgies. There's musical numbers that showcase the band that they got, and while not a bad band, they spend way too much time on center stage. We also aren't told where that center stage is, so we get shots that are obviously in the club, but which we might be intended to believe is somewhere else. Sturber doesn't really have any sort of plan to handle Stefan or his people, and while she does seem to be okay with Stefan coming to her again, she doesn't really try and kill off the rest of them. Apparently her werewolves are just really incompetent, which makes her seem like less of a capable adversary. In a way, that's kind of indicative of the whole film. Everyone seems to be feeling their way, and no one really feels like they have an idea of what to do. At one point Sturber says how dangerous Stefan is, but at no point do we really see how dangerous he is, or how much she respects him for being dangerous. They just sort of blunderbuss around and guess at it, and a lot of people die around them. People and werewolves, I might add, which makes the impact of the werewolf really much less. Werewolves are not quite as effective in this film as they were in the original, and in many ways that's the fault of trying to outdo the original with more werewolves, more boobs, more violence, more weird stuff happening, more magic, more all this stuff. The idea of a queen of werewolves who is like 10,000 years old and knows all this weird howling magic is a really cool idea, especially one played by Sybil Danning in 1985. You have to admit that is a really cool idea. It's just a tragedy that it was not handled nearly so well. Sybil Danning now could be amazing in this role. Sybil Danning anytime is always amazing. Unfortunately, she had nothing to work with. She handled it professionally as always, just like Christopher Lee did with her brother character. These are two very good actors that are always really professional about what they do. I would have really loved to see these concepts in a better written, better directed, and better acted story. Because while the acting from Sybil and Christopher was very good, the acting of the rest was bad or uneven. Or the character was so minor that we really didn't get a chance to spend much time with him, like Vasila. And of course the horribly underused Ferdy Mayne, who barely had any time on the screen to do anything at all. The effects were terrible. They could have been done a lot better. You could have even done them without even trying to make them special effects. The makeup was pretty bad. Werewolf sex, that sort of typifies the entire movie as to how ridiculous it looked and how awful it was. This isn't a good film by any means. It has a good foundation, it has some great ideas, but the execution is terrible. There is a reason why this is one of the worst sequels in history, and that is because it just didn't come together well. It could have been so much more. Would I advise you to watch this? Absolutely. Watch it. Now, there are some things that are kind of disturbing. Like, there are some things like the spell, the taxidermy wolves, all the furs, all that stuff. It's tacky. It's very tacky. But you have to sort of imagine that they probably went out and got all this stuff cheap and decided, yeah, that'll work for set dressing. They probably did what they could, but I can't imagine they had too low of a budget considering what they accomplished, but it really looks like a very low budget. So it's really a so bad it's good film. It's something that you can watch and kind of laugh at, but it's definitely not something you can take seriously. Watch if you want to see Christopher Lee in a role that has way more dignity than it deserves. Watch if you want to see Sybil Danning get her tits out a lot and roll around in ridiculous half-werewolf makeup. Watch if you want to see Reb Brown screaming about fuzzballs. You will probably not be riveted or compelled. You'll probably laugh a lot. You may regret spending an hour and a half with The Howling 2, but you can say you've seen it, and that's more than a lot of people these days. I'm Joe, and thanks for listening.